Good afternoon and welcome to the GIBS CEO Flash Forum. Today we are going to reflect on the year that was and travel on a journey with a gentleman who's had only 2 jobs in his career. Or let me rather say 2 employers in his career. And this, you might think, nah, boring, but it's really important to recognize that you could have a rich and impactful career in your life and you don't actually have to change jobs all the time. So a message to the wise, a message to the young. Please listen carefully about an interesting career that has been crafted over time. Today, I am joined by a very enigmatic and one of, I suppose for me, the most forthright CEOs on the JSE today, the CEO of Motus Group, Mr. Osman Arbee. Osman, welcome.
Thank you.
So you are a leader of an organization that you describe, and I think these numbers might be off because things have changed. At the time, 17,500 people, founded in its roots, actually, 1948 through the Imperial Group, listed more recently in 2018, and you describe yourself as a route to market and a vital link between brand and customer in the vehicle ownership cycle. So, what do all these words mean? Who is Motus?
Okay, so you're quite correct. Motus was born in 1948 with one filling station called Barney's Motor Spares. It grew with the Abelkop family, who grew the business, acquired a few dealerships, and then came along an Irishman called Bill Lynch, looked for a job, completed his matric certificate, his matric schooling in Ireland, came to South Africa for a job, and walked into one of the dealerships and said, I need a job. And they said, we don't have a job. And he said, I'm happy to work as your salesman, pay me on a commission basis. He started that job, and the Abelkop family saw a lot of potential in Mr. Lynch and employed him as a salesperson, became the accountant, and ultimately grew their business and got the business listed in 1987 as Imperial Holdings Limited. With the listed entity, the business grew into logistics, South Africa, Germany, and Africa. The motor business grew in South Africa, rest of Africa, Australia, and the UK. They were in leasing businesses, they were in tourism businesses, they were in aviation businesses, a number of businesses, including Imperial Bank. As time went on, the businesses got bigger, and some of the business listed on their own. For example, Tourvest was listed on its own, Equestra was listed on its own. Ultimately, we got to 2 businesses, the logistics business and the motor business. And in 2018, under the leadership of Mark Lamberti, we did the unbundling of Motus, Motus meaning motion in Latin. We became the motor division, and I became the CEO. And Mohammed Akuji, who was the CFO of the group at that time, became the CEO of the Imperial Logistics business. So a very rich history, but you know, as children grow up, they become adults, and the adults got listed. And that's how we were born in 1948, but born as a listed company only 2 years ago. But the history is very rich.
So you were reborn.
We were reborn,
yes,
as adults.
As adults, yes. And you were reborn as a multinational corporation. So not like you were born local, you were reborn global, right? So you are located.
So if we put it into perspective, means we've got about 326 dealerships in South Africa, 120 in the UK, and 36 in Australia. That's on the motor side of the retail side of the business. Then we're exclusive importers of the other products, namely Hyundai, Kia, Renault, and Mitsubishi. Then we in car rental business through Europe Car and Tempest. And then we provide financial services, not to people who are buying our cars, but we manage the maintenance funds, service plans, warranty funds, insurance products, and we sell a lot of the insurance and non-insurance products through our financial services business. And then we've got an aftermarket parts business, which you'll know as Midas,
Yeah.
which is one of our brands. We've got Alert Engine Parts, who is different. And that business has now grown. And we've just bought a business called Arco in Taiwan. We've set up a distribution center in Beijing to help with the sourcing of goods, of aftermarket parts in China, store them there, unpack them, and then send them to South Africa in more manageable containers. So we're the biggest motor company in the country. And I think the differential between us and other motor companies is the fact that we import vehicles, we sell vehicles, we rent vehicles, we repair them. We have financial services to support that, and we've got aftermarket parts business. So we have a whole suite of integrated services in the motor industry, and that's what separates us from the rest of the industry.
So you are describing effectively a non-manufacturing,
Yes,
automotive, diversified company.
100%.
Right? And I imagine you enter 2020 like the rest of us, and you're thinking 20 plenty, because you have huge plans. You are part of this industry that is producing over 500,000 rands of vehicles of sales every year, in your particular organization in particular. And then COVID hits. We're all in lockdown. Can you talk to us about the impact of COVID on your business across your 5 platforms, those of import and distribution, retail, rental, financial services, as well as aftermarket parts?
Okay, so to give you context,
Yeah.
to December 2019, this country sold 536,000 vehicles. We were already hitting a recession in January, February, March, so we predicted that we'll sell about 480,000 vehicles for the calendar year 2020. So 536 going to 475, 480, and then COVID happened. What do you think happened to that number? We're predicting 375,000.
That's a collapse.
So it just shows you that 536, projecting 480, and we're forecasting this year at 375,000 vehicles.
Not to be unkind, because I know I'm an academic, so I do this to my students. So what year does that take us to, this 380 odd that you're projecting? Does it take us back 20 years?
It'll be about 8 or 10 years it will take us back to.
Yeah.
Now, if
So
you ask the next question,
we've lost a decade of
but if you
growth.
ask the next question, how long will it take you to get back
Yes.
to the 480, and that's 3 years.
Yeah.
So it just shows you, yes, it's taken you back, but it set you back 3 years.
Yeah.
And when you
It's
set
actually even more because you are not even growing, right?
correct. But we were not growing already prior to COVID.
Yeah.
We were already starting to feel the recession, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So that's just to give you perspective of what happens in the country. As far as Motus is concerned, 2 days before we got into the lockdown, we met as an executive team on Teams. And we said, hold on. You've got to start forgetting what you learned in the CASA classroom, what you learned in your MBA 101 classrooms. We need to focus on the business at hand. What have we got? We've got plenty cars. We've got bank debt, and we've got no customers. So, okay, we're going to a lockdown. We don't know when we get out of lockdown. So let's plan for that date that we don't know when it's going to happen, but the planning being, communicate with your customers via WhatsApps, social media, emails, whatever you need to talk to them, talk to them. If they have an inquiry on a car, be it servicing, things like that, keep their numbers, talk to them. If they want to look for cars or buy cars, talk to them. So we started working with the motor industry bodies, and we eventually got to the middle of May where we could open our dealerships, but again with only 30% of our staff. That happened in mid-May. And within 2 weeks, just 60%, and 2 weeks after that, we were back to 100% of our staff.
But I mean, clearly from a diversified group perspective, you didn't have the same effect across all of the businesses. So for example, rentals would have been hit very differently to retail and to aftermarket. So talk to us about the mix.
Okay, so firstly, rental became a no-go.
Yeah.
No one was traveling, no international tourists, no local tourists, people were not traveling, they were not making accidents, so you couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Complete shutdown. Dealerships, complete shutdown in 6 weeks because no one was coming to our stores. All communication we had was electronic. So again, complete shutdown. Financial services, complete shutdown because no one was phoning in for any additional services. They couldn't take their car in for services or anything like that. The only area that could do some businesses was the aftermarket parts business via Midas and alert engine parts, because we were allowed to sell parts to people in the taxi industry, to government organizations, and to people in the medical field. But again, it was minimalistic, so it was very low. Then came middle of May. With all the plans that the team had developed during the first lockdown, we started delivering cars in May. In the 2 weeks of May, the latter part of May, we delivered 6,500 vehicles. Now, sitting at home, you could have thought that's an impossible job, but we did it.
Yeah.
And the reason why we did it was we had a proactive management team that was talking to customers, whether they wanted a pre-owned or a new vehicle, and talking to them that way. They kept in touch with us. And on the first day of the period we were open to go to lockdown 4, we started delivering cars. However, there were challenges. We could sell the car,
Yeah.
but we couldn't register the car because the licensing department
closed.
wasn't open.
Yeah.
So I used all the permits up in 2 weeks. Then we had to lobby the Department of Transport to start opening licensing offices. That happens in the first week of June. And so on, we got the economy back going. And by the end of June, we delivered another 10,500 vehicles. So that's when we created a new norm, which was called the post-COVID norm, because whatever happened pre-COVID wasn't going to be repeated.
So give us a context. Under pre-COVID, what were you doing a month?
We would do about 13,500 vehicles a month.
Yeah.
We dropped to 6.5 in May and then about 10,400, 500 in June, and we've held on to that number.
And now you are doing 13,500 under normal trade with people coming in and
Correct.
out. And now you even got up to 10,000 under restrained trade.
Correct.
That's exceptional.
I think you give credit to the team that was working behind the scenes when everyone was in lockdown, A. B, you give credit to the banks that continue funding these vehicles, because remember, you only sell vehicles where the banks fund. So the banks came to the party. And I think the Department of Industry assisted with getting us from 0% staff to 30%, 60, and then 100%. They assisted as well with getting us back in, because remember, in 6 weeks, the economy was devastated. The economy needed to pick up. And the one area we could start picking up is get people back to work was into factories.
Yeah.
And that's how the OEMs put pressure on. So we got the factories open. When that opened, dealerships opened, and slowly, things started getting to a new normal.
So you talk about this notion of lobbying. In academic terms, we have a concept called license to operate. And license to operate really refers to the notion of society allows you to operate because you're an ethical business. And you know, this session was organized by our ethics think tank under Rabbi Gideon Pokrant. And so it's in that context that I'm asking this question about, so in our world, license to operate is about ethics. In your world, it's truly about license to operate, where your license to operate was yanked from you, like for most people, due to the hard lockdown. What have you learned in this period about how to unlock and how to regain that license to operate during this period from March to date?
I think the fundamental thing is that we mustn't lose touch with our employees who are key to our businesses. There is no business without people. So we talk to our people regularly. We communicated throughout the lockdowns on protocols, what to do, what not to do, safety measures. And remember, we've come to the new norm of sanitizing and wearing masks and social distancing. But remember, in those days, in the early days, it wasn't the norm. Now it's become the norm. So we had to create these standards for our organization. Remember, we're not an organization that has one address. I've got 321 dealerships. We've got 540 stores out there, not all owned, but franchisee stores. We've got call centers. So we are a very decentralized business throughout the country. So you get to get the message out to the people to say, yes, we are where we are. You've got to keep positive, but these are the safety protocols that we had to develop on what to do and what not to do, interacting with customers. For example, delivering cars to customers had to be at their homes. Some of them wouldn't come in. So we had to learn to do that delivery. We had to sanitize vehicles to take them. This was never done before. So we had to do all those things and adapt our business to the new norm. We had to put screens up. We had to get sanitizers. We had to get equipment. We had to make sure that staff are well equipped with masks. In fact, we had to send some equipment to some of our dealerships in Africa because they didn't have it. We exported them from here. So communication with staff was key. Then communication with customers was key. They mustn't forget who you are. Then we were creative in the way we were talking to them, because during the lockdown of 6 weeks, some of the customers' service intervals were expiring. So they thought, no, that's it, we've lost our interval. So if on the 15th of April your car was 30,000 kilometers, you've lost it. We wrote to them and said, no problem, we'll extend your service interval. So you can come anytime during May or June and we'll still honor the service plan. We could have taken the money and pocketed the money, but that wasn't behaving ethically and not helping the customer when he needed me most. So we extended service plans, maintenance plans, whatever we could. We extended that. And I think the customers saw good faith in that these are the people we can deal with. So we came out with very creative ideas of how to talk to customers, how to look after their vehicles, writing to them and saying, please be careful. That doesn't mean you haven't driven your vehicle, but these are the issues that can go wrong. And we extended our workshop hours to the Saturday to make sure we could accommodate the pent-up demand that was created for this situation. In another business, fortunately for us in the aftermarket parts business, when we were not in lockdown, our counterparts in China were in lockdown, so their factories were closed. When we went into lockdown, their factories were open. So as a result, they were producing parts for us. So the day we opened up, we had 176 containers in Durban waiting for us with stock to sell. But we had planned. The day went out, we better order. Excuse me.
So while you are collecting yourself, what I'd like you to also comment on, because I'm hearing you talking about how you're looking after your people in your organization, how you're looking after your customers. I'm also interested in the license to operate, about how you engage as an industry together and how you engage with government in terms of for them to be able to understand the importance of your industry to the economy of South Africa.
Excuse me.
Not a problem.
So firstly, in the industry, we don't talk to the Department of Trade and Industry as dealers. We talk to our regulatory bodies, which is NAMSA and NADA, and the RMI as well. So we talk to them. They have very structured bodies and committees that are well represented with the OEMs, we call it. It's the original equipment manufacturers, which are the factories of Toyota, VW. Their leaders sit on this board together with us. And then we talk to government in the form of Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Transport, and we work with them to create a situation whereby we started getting this business back to normal. Because remember, we only sell what they manufacture. So when their factories got up and going, we had to start selling product as well, because you couldn't sell if they didn't manufacture. So they continue the manufacturing, we continue selling, and we as a business are not in manufacturing, but we worked with the manufacturers and obviously with our industry bodies, and the two big departments we talk to are Department of Trade and Industry and the Department of Transport.
Lovely. And do you feel that your industry managed those relationships well?
Very well.
Absolutely. So I'm going to stay a little bit on the COVID side and move on, because I really want to spend a little bit more time around the innovation part of the business. Is from a content point of view, what were some of the difficult decisions you had to take? I note, for example, that in the public domain in June, you mentioned that you had to do some really hard staff rationalization, about 2,000 people, at a cost of somewhere between 120 to 140 million rand. That's what is in the public domain. I can't imagine that was an easy decision to take as a management team. But there's a whole host of what would call difficult decisions you had to take during this period.
I think
Can you share with us, please?
You're 100% right. The most difficult decision was when we got into restructuring. You can always restructure assets and let them work for you differently. But when it comes to people, it's a very, very difficult thing, because our business is about our people. But when the industry shut down, like the car rental industry, we had to relook at our business and saying, this business will not be back tomorrow morning. It could take at least till June, July next year to get to some form of normality. So what did we do? Firstly, we looked at the people that could afford to take early retirement. So we looked at that strategy. We looked at freezing pension contributions. We minimized increases in our medical aid. We're fortunate we manage our own medical aid, and we could manage the cost increases. Then we worked on a rotational timetable. That means people work at different times. So you don't, you could have 100 people working, but 50 at a time, so no one loses their job. In the initial phase, we allowed special leave to be taken. So if you took 8 days of annual leave, we gave you 8 days of special leave. So people got paid some money. But you can only do that for so long. So we tried a lot of the measures, and ultimately when we realized that we had nothing else to pull levers on, so the total staff reduction was 3,200. 1,800 were people that resigned. 1,200 were people that took voluntary packages, early retirement, that kind of thing. And then ultimately we left with 1,200 people. And it was very difficult, but under the circumstances, to bring your staff down from 18,700 people to 17,500, we felt we managed it quite well. And the industry that took the biggest knock was the car rental business, because there was no business. The other businesses we could manage, do a bit of staff rotation, that kind of thing.
I must say, though, I've been traveling a bit between Oliver Tambo and King Shaka. And the last time I went into Europcar, and there were these two young guys that came in. They didn't have any bookings, and there was no cars because the businesses come back. So the car rental seems to be picking up again, because you can't just walk in anymore. You need to actually go pre-book, which was a positive sign. I don't know if it was just a freak day for me, or is it becoming the norm?
I think, to give you context, we ran a car rental fleet of 22,000 vehicles. Today we only have 13,000 vehicles.
Okay.
So yes, we may be booked, but we booked of half the base that we worked on before.
Lovely.
So as a result, we had to adapt, because cars are expensive assets. They need to be looked after. They need people. They need cleaning. They need storage. So if there's no business, cut your cloth accordingly. And that's how we brought the fleet down from 22,000 to 13,000. And we're hoping that that'll be sufficient to carry us through the festive season and take us through January, February. And then we'll make another call at that point in time and saying, is 13 the right number? If it's not, do we need less or do we need more? And we'll make that call at that point in time. So you're quite right. The business has come back, but it's nowhere near
at the levels
they were. At 22,000 vehicles, we had 13,000 vehicles.
So you and I have different problems in terms of physically. We are losing hair, you graying. So it reminds me of how old your organization is, 72 years old, right? So at 72, you would think, this organization is slow, it's hard to innovate, it's boring. And yet when you're reading about your organization, you talk about things like remove cost and complexity, right? You talk about drive a competitive advantage through innovation. What are you talking about? You're 72 years old. I mean, do you mean it when you talk about innovation in your business?
So I think let's ask ourselves what's happened in the industry. Firstly, your customers have changed. Your customers are younger. Your customers are very IT savvy. They're on social media. So they're doing at the time when I bought a car, which was a long time ago, I would actually walk into a dealership, kick the tires, sit in the car, do all those things. Today, what do people do? They look for a website. They're either looking for Google or you go into a website where they sell the vehicles. We've created a website called Motus.cars. You click onto a new car, and then it'll take you to you want to go to any of the manufacturers, be it Toyota, VW, Hyundai, Kia, Renault, Mercedes-Benz, you can access it. So you don't go in, log in and log out 10 times. So you can do that. Then you go to pre-owned. It'll ask you, have you got the budget? What sort of repayment terms are you looking for? Which area are you in? It'll search for you and it'll bring your list up. Now, that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. So it's still the same car, maybe more electronic and more IT savvy, but the customer has changed. That means we got to adapt to the new customer. The customer is younger, the customer's needs are different, and the customer is shopping differently. Customers still want to come to a dealership, but they do a lot more homework before they come to a dealership. So for example, on their cars, they would have done their homework and seen what can they get. They would have done homework on the new car, whether it's a new or a pre-owned they want to buy. They would have done that homework. So when they're coming to you in your dealership, they've done a lot of homework. So what happens is that your salespeople have to be trained differently, because it's not what the salesperson wants to sell, it's what the customer wants. So you've got to listen to the customer. And then when the customer walks out, they leave their car behind and they leave with your car. So firstly, you have to develop the software. You've got to change the training of your people. You've got to think differently about your interaction in the way you interact with people on the dealership floor. Then you've got to simplify processes. For example, the customer is not going to fill in 5 applications to 5 banks. We do that for him. Fill in the application, we submit, press, 4 or 5 banks your application's gone to. Answer will come back. This bank will offer that, this bank will offer that. We tell the customer which you want, I'll take that one. Now we start in the process of completing a deal. So what has happened over time is that your customers changed, processes have changed, people have become IT savvy. The other thing that has changed is we have a lot of regulatory issues in this country when you become a buyer of a car. If you bought a car recently, there wasn't a 1-pager you signed. You must have signed 20 pages. That's the nature of our industry. There's a lot of regulation to comply with. So on the one side, we're trying to make your life easy. On the other side, regulation is what we've got to comply with. The banks have added requirements as well. And then you've got to think about the added services I need to provide you with. Because if you buy a car, you've got to think about a tracking device. You've got to think about the service plan, the maintenance plan. Has this car got a warranty plan? So you've got to think about all these things, insurance. So the way we present ourselves also has changed. Because you've done all your homework, but there are a lot of things you couldn't do homework on in terms of the value-added services that we provide.
So what you've done is given me an insight into the why. The market has shifted, the need has changed, and the what you have to do in response to the market shifting and the reasons changing. I'd like you to take us into the how. And in thinking about that, let me lean into a question here from I think it's Mr. Pragasan Chetty, who says, how do you see e-commerce versus traditional bricks and mortar business complementing each other in the medium to the long term? Right? So just how do you as Motus executives think about these two markets, the e-market and the traditional market? So I'm more interested in the how.
So if you talk about the e-market, so a lot of people, we had to create, for example, this website I talked about, motus.cars. So you can do a lot of your work there. So it's like you not wanting to walk into Woolies, but you go into the website and say, what do I want? You can click and it'll come delivered whenever you want it delivered. With the motor vehicle, it's more complex. However, you've done a lot more homework in your budget range. What can you afford? The kind of car you're looking for, whether it's a small SUV or whether it's a hatch vehicle, whether it's a premium end vehicle. So you do a lot more homework. So you don't have to walk around 10 dealerships anymore. You've done all the homework. That's the e-commerce part of it. Now you know what you want. You walk straight to that dealership. Because remember, it's your second largest purchase after a house. Your house being your first and your car is your second. You still want to see this asset.
Tell you were married a long time ago. There's lobola somewhere in between
in
there.
between, and there's others as well. But in terms of assets, I wouldn't call lobola maybe
Fair
an
comment.
asset. I don't know.
I stand corrected.
So now you want to go see the red. Is it what red? Is it a grey? Do the tires match? Did you think the mag wheels look like that? So that's when you find a link between e-commerce and the dealerships. And the other thing you need as well, services can never be done on any e-commerce base. You got to bring you can book your car in. I'll come in at 8 o'clock at morning. It's a 15,000. You can do all those things. Ultimately, I need your car.
Yes.
And you need to bring your car to a dealership. So the need for fancy Taj Mahal type of dealerships won't exist. I agree with that. But there will be basic dealerships together with service points required, because that's the nature of the asset. It needs that. And when people buy those assets, they want to touch and feel. As much as you and I think e-commerce will replace that, I think it's human nature that they need to feel and touch an asset, look at the asset because of the investment. The other thing is that, remember, you can buy something that you'll use once. This car will be with you for at least 4 to 5 years, minimum.
Yeah.
So you're going to be using this asset. And in South Africa, public transport is not good. As a result, your car is a means of earning your income.
Yeah.
Because you've got to jump in that car, get to work, drop off children, pick up children. It's part of our lives. Unlike if you're in the first world cities, you actually don't need a car.
Yeah.
But in South Africa, we are where we are.
So let's stay a little bit in the space of innovation, talk about culture, because Edgar Schein talks about a culture of innovation. Help us to understand how you're able to achieve this worldview from a culture perspective within Motus.
Okay, so firstly, we've got one of our executive directors, Carrie Castle, was responsible for driving innovation. She's got a whole team underneath her that wherever there's a speaker, firstly, a team of our leaders went to the Silicon Valley to see what's happening in that area. What will cars look like in 3, 5, 6 years in terms of IT? Then they went to Berlin to see what happens in Europe. Then they went to Cape Town to see how these private equity funds are funding IT companies and what are they developing. So we've done all that. We've set up a team and we have regular meetings where anyone that wants to logs into a Teams meeting and you'll get a speaker who'll talk on our innovation. So we're trying to help the young mind that don't do things the way they were or the way they are. Think about your business, whether you're a salesman or whether you're in accounting or whether you're in marketing, whatever field you're in, think differently. And we're trying to change the mindset of people to think differently by having speakers. And then we have projects. So we've selected a few projects which we're busy working on. Like, for example, Motus.cars was born out of that. And today it's a fully fledged product that's there. The bank finances, you don't fill in 5 application forms and it's done once and it's sent through. We're working on software at the moment to make the car rental experience a much easier experience, because you've got a driver's license when you're booking your car. Why do I need to see it in Cape Town Airport? So you can scan your driver's license in, scan all your details in. When your picture can be scanned in, we know what you look like. So when you pitch up at Cape Town Airport or at Durban Airport or at Joburg Airport, we should be able to give you a key. But you would have read all the details, you would have read the contract, everything. So those are the kind of things. Again, car rental is car rental. But what are we trying to do? We're trying to change the experience of when you're renting a car. For example, at the moment, when you return your car for car rental, someone will walk around the car and look for scratches and dents. We're currently developing IT that as you drive in, we'll be able to see what scratches there are, and it'll compare the last time to this time and tell us, worry about these 2 points only. And it'll give you a picture, I'll be able to SMS it to you and say, these 2 scratches are your problem. But I can prove it.
Yeah.
Because I would have had that car on the system, which is barcoded and scanned. A picture would have been taken before and after, and we can do that kind of thing. Now that takes time, it doesn't happen over time. So we're busy developing things like that. We're developing relationships with financial institutions, with, for example, Discovery and Old Mutual and things like that, where they want to develop a warranty product for a vehicle. We work with them. We launched with Discovery an extended warranty product. Now they don't sell it to my customers, they've got their own customer base, which is very different to mine, but we help with all the information we have on cars, over 20 years old now. We can predict and write algorithms about predictability of warranties, service, maintenance, all that kind of thing. So those are the kind of products we're looking at as well. So innovation is not a destination, it's a journey.
Yeah.
So we've embarked on this journey, getting the minds changed, working with our customers, and it'll continue chopping and changing. So I can't tell you we're going to arrive in 3 months' time. No.
So talking about innovation being a journey, innovation is about solving problems that matter, right? So when we think about the automotive industry, the biggest thinking at the moment is about manufacturing of battery technology, this notion about clean energy and so forth in the first world. How does that play out in our world, where we have different energy challenges?
So that's where it'll take us longer. If you're in Europe or you're in the US or Australia, hybrids and electrical vehicles will come in faster. For example, if you go to Schiphol Airport, you'll jump into an electric car. You go to Denmark, it'll happen. You'll go to Norway, all these areas, it's going to happen. Here, firstly, the technology is too expensive for us. Our government doesn't have money to subsidize that vehicle, where we're talking of 3,000 euros, 2,000 euros subsidies, 4,000 euros. So it'll come, but it'll come much later, A. B, the fuels we have are not clean enough. When we sell Euro 5 trucks in the UK, they've got the fuel for that, we don't have the fuel for that. So that's a cleaning burning fuel, but we can't bring Euro 6 in. We don't have the fuel for it. So it will take time. Unfortunately, we don't have the government subsidies that will allow us, but we will be pushed in that direction. Because if you think about it, South Africa exports a lot of its vehicles that we manufacture locally. Now, if you're going to manufacture locally, you need to start thinking about manufacturing what the global market needs. And that's when they're going to start manufacturing vehicles that are battery operated so we can sell to the rest of the world. Otherwise, what are you going to sell? You're going to sell to yourself?
Yeah.
Not enough. So technology will change. There will have to be investments, but that's going to happen between government and the OEMs. It's not going to happen on its own.
Yeah.
So that will take a lot longer. Africa will take a lot longer. South Africa will take a lot longer. But that's the new reality. I mean, we don't know whether we go home tonight, whether we're going to have electricity.
Yeah,
so I may not be able to plug in my car.
I know.
Because you've got the generator at home.
No, because I'm still neighbors with President Zuma.
Oh, so you
and you know he's still the power on the throne. So as we come to a conclusion, and this is about understanding the business model, the business responses that you've taken and the decisions we've taken, I'd like you to reflect about the process of decision making. You started with that earlier and you said take your CA 101 and MBA 101 and put that aside. We need a different way of thinking. And then you also talk about values in your organizations, the values of fairness, of accountability, of being driven, of being environmentally friendly. I wonder the extent to which these values played a role in shaping what you've become in the past 2 years as you were reborn, and certainly what you've had to become again as you were reborn again in 2020. Talk to us about the process of decision making and behavior within Motus.
The first thing is, I don't run a business where one size fits all. I run 5 virtually independent businesses, and you've got to allow the divisional CEOs to make decisions, to empower them, and make sure their teams are empowered. If you're going to try and run this business from the center with all policies and procedures that I develop at the center with maybe 100 people and delegate it to my divisional CEOs, is not going to happen. So that's the one fundamental difference in our business, is that it's employing people that feel empowered and empower them to make decisions. Do not abdicate responsibility, provide leadership, but make sure that they feel empowered to make decisions. Those young people that are running your business are going to make great decisions with your assistance. So what we've noticed as our strength pre-COVID and post-COVID is empowered CEOs, empowered management teams that make decisions that matter most, because they're on the ground and they can make decisions quickly. I can't make the decisions with the management team in head office. So let the decisions be guided and made in the divisions, and that's how you get good entrepreneurs that are agile and happy to take risks. And that's the success. Whether it's post or pre-COVID, doesn't make a difference. That formula will always withstand the test of time. If you've got good entrepreneurs who are agile, happy to think on their feet, and empower their people, then I think you've got the formula for success.
I'm so happy that we concluded our CEO series with this conversation. The 5 key lessons I take out of this conversation are: in a crisis, remember to do this that you should have done pre-crisis, but it becomes even more crucial in a crisis. That is, communicate, communicate, communicate. Communicate with your customers, communicate with your people, and communicate with your industry. So communicate, lesson number 1. 2, be proactive. You need to embed and establish a proactive management culture and a proactive management team. 3, work on changing the mindset. Think differently. Innovate, innovate, innovate. 4, empower the people to make great decisions. And 5, surround yourself with good and agile entrepreneurial managers. Osman, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the year, as short as it might be, but I think we all deserve a break.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Morris. Thank
and
you.
enjoy the rest of your evening,
Thank
everybody.
you.